Okay, the last few weeks we've been talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim, and this past Shabbat, Parshat Beshalach, was Shabbat Shira, with the splitting of the sea and the song of gratitude from Bnei Yisrael. In this week's Parsha, Parshat Yitro, we have Ma'amad Har Sinai, the revelation at Sinai, and the Aseret HaDibrot and the Luchot. But the Parsha begins with a discussion about Yitro. Yitro is the high priest of Midian, father-in-law of Moshe, and he greets Moshe, and he's all excited to come with Zipporah and the kids and to meet up with Moshe and the Jewish people. And one of the main thing that Yitro suggests to Moshe, and the Parsha elaborates on this in detail, is he sees Moshe Rabbeinu who's judging the people from day to night, and he says that you're going to wither, it's too much for you. And Yitro suggests to Moshe, proposes a whole new way of judging the people, and he presents a judicial system where there's judges and officers, and so where basically Moshe can delegate to other officers and judges to help judge the people. And Moshe Rabbeinu listens to his father-in-law, so that's the first chiddush of the parsha, that a son-in-law should listen to his in-laws, especially when they have good ideas. And so Moshe Rabbeinu listens to his father-in-law, and he sets up this system. He chooses very carefully and wisely, he chooses different judges for the people to help judge all the different cases and issues and questions that the Jewish people had. It's a major question that's discussed in the Gemara, in Zvachim, and debated by the commentaries as to when exactly did Yitro come to Bnei Yisrael. And this whole first section of the Parsha, the first perek of Parshat Yitro, where Yitro comes to Moshe and he's all excited about Yetzias Mitzrayim, and he proposes this judicial system. When did this exactly take place? So Rashi's of the opinion, because it says by Himi Macharas, it was the day after that Yitro proposed to Moshe this judicial system. So Rashi says that the day after was the day after Yom Kippur, and it was already months and months after Yetziat Mitzrayim, and that Rashi's of the opinion, the school of thought, who says that this whole section of the beginning of Yitro really takes place after the giving of the Torah. Rashi says this follows the principle that he sometimes employs of ein muktam u'meucher b'Torah, that sometimes sections of the Torah are out of chronological order. In general, there is a chronological order to the Torah. Within Psukim, everyone agrees that there's an order within the pasuk itself, and I have a whole bar Torah about that, but not for now. But generally speaking, the parshiot and the prakim are in order. But there are a number of cases where parshiot, for one reason or another, are out of order. And Rashi says this is one of those examples. What leads Rashi and that school of thought to say that really this whole section occurred after the giving of the Torah? It occurs after the next perek in Yitro. And there's a couple different clues, a couple different things that lead this school of thought to this conclusion. The first one is that it says in the Parsha that where does it say this? It says yes, okay. So thankfully, my son-in-law, Yosef Yaakov, had a Mikros Gedolos here, and he was able to share it with me, which is what I'm using. So the pasuk says, "Vayavo Yisro chosin Moshe." This is Perek Yudchet pasuk Hey. That Yitro came to Moshe and to Bnei Yisrael. Asher hu chonesham har Elokim. He came to the Har Elokim, to the mountain of God. The mountain of God presumably is referring to Har Sinai. Now, it only says that Bnei Israel came to Har Sinai in the next chapter. So that's one kind of that's one pasuk that kind of raises a red flag that maybe this parsha is out of place. Another thing is that when Yitro sees Moshe Rabbeinu judging the people, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu responds when Yitro says, "Why are you sitting on your own and judging the people on your own? You're going to wither." So Moshe responds, Perek Yud Chet Pasuk Tet Zayin. He says, "Ki elahem davar ba'elai," that when the Jewish people have a dispute, V'shafatati ben isha ben re'ehu, so I judge between a man and his friend. V'hodati et chukei Elokim ve'et toratav, and I teach him the decrees of God and His Torah. Now, this is, but Bnei Israel didn't receive the Torah yet, right? If you just follow chronological order, so they didn't receive the Aseret Dibrot, they didn't receive the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't go to Har Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights yet. So how could it say in the pasuk here that Moshe Rabbeinu says that he teaches Bnei Israel the rulings to apply to their particular situation based on the decrees of Hashem and the Torah of Hashem? Now, Rashi does point out in last week's parsha that Bnei Israel did get some mitzvos prior to Ma'aban Har Sinai. This is at Marah with the bitter waters, when the water was bitter, and Moshe Rabbeinu threw a tree, right, like a tree behind me. He threw a tree into the water, and it sweetened the water. And it says over there that Hashem gave Bnei Israel some decrees, and it's a little bit of a cryptic pasuk. Rashi there says that Hashem gave Bnei Israel some mitzvos, like Shabbos and Paraduma and some of the dinim. But that's perhaps a way you could explain this pasuk, that here in Parshat Yitro, Moshe Rabbeinu says that he's teaching them the laws of the Torah, because some of the mitzvahs had already been given. But based on these two psukim, these are two of the main proofs that are brought by Rashi and others to say that really this whole first section of the Parsha, Marvin, is out of place. Why? Because it says that they came to the Har Elokim, which is that Yitro came to Har Elokim, but they're not at Har Elokim yet. So it must be that Bnei Israel already came to Har Elokim. And the second thing is that Moshe Rabbeinu was teaching Bnei Israel about the chukim and the Torah that Hashem gave to Bnei Israel already. There was already the Aseret Dibrot, and already Moshe was on Har Sinai for 40 days, and he was up there 2 times, and it's after Yom Kippur. All right, so that's what leads that school of thought to that conclusion, that really this portion is out of place, and really Yitro came after Ma'aban Har Sinai. The Ramban disagrees with Rashi. The Ramban was of the opinion that the Ramban agrees that there is such a concept of Ein Mukum Nucha B'Torah, Ayala. Don't get the wrong idea. Ramban agrees that, yes, when push comes to shove, there are a couple of rare circumstances where a parsha is out of place. But in general, the Ramban was much more circumspect. He was much more careful in employing this principle. And the Ramban, in a number of places, a few places, disagrees with Rashi. For example, by the Cheder Egel. Later in Shemot, you have the first parshiot that explain about the building of the Mishkan. Then you have the whole episode of the sin of the golden calf. And then you have the actual building of the Mishkan. And Rashi there again says, Ein Muktim Ucha B'Torah. There's no chronological order necessarily in the Torah, and really the whole sin of the golden calf happened before the command of building the Mishkan. And we'll talk about it then. And the Ramban disagrees with Rashi and says, no, what are you talking about? Why are you compelled to say that the portions are out of order? The Ramban says, no, the Mishkan was inherently something that Hashem wanted Bnei Israel to do. And that was part of the plan all along, even prior to the golden calf. So that's another example, Marcy, of where the Rashi and Ramban disagree in terms of whether we employ this principle of Ein Muktam Uchar B'Torah. Why I mentioned Marcy or Ayala earlier, that's once in a while I just mention names. One congregant once told me years ago, said, Rabbi, don't mention names in the middle of this year. Okay, maybe some people don't like it, but the truth is it keeps people on their toes. That who knows, maybe they'll get a shout out, so maybe they should stay awake. In any case, So by the Cheda Egel, you have a machlokas Rashi Ramban, whether that portion of the Egel is out of place. And here also, by the first section of Parshat Yitro, you have a very interesting machloket between Rashi and Ramban, whether this section is out of place. Now, what's the Ramban? So Ramban says that the first portion is in the right place. Why? Because if the Torah was already given, that raises other questions. If the Torah was already given, and the Ramban addresses, the two proofs that are brought by Rashi, and he actually discusses it. But the Ramban says that if indeed Ma'amad Har Sinai happened already, so why does it say in the opening pasuk of the parsha? It says that Yitro heard at Kol Asher Asa Elokim LeMoshe Yisrael Amoki Otzia Hashem et Yisrael Mitzrayim. It says that Yitro heard all about Yitzias Mitzrayim, and he was all excited about Yitzias Mitzrayim. And then a little bit later, Moshe says to Yisro in pasuk Chet, Perek Yud Chet, pasuk Chet, he says that Kol Asher Asa Hashem LeParo LeMitzrayim, and that Hashem saved them, and the Makos, and Kriyas Yamsuf. But Gabi and all, which is the question is, if indeed Ma'amad Har Sinai happened already, so then Yitro should have been excited not just about Yetzias Mitzrayim, but he should have been excited about Ma'amad Har Sinai as well, revelation of God at Har Sinai. And if indeed Ma'amad Har Sinai happened already, then Moshe in his response should have said, "You won't believe it. You won't believe it. 40 days I was on the mountain. You won't believe what happened to me there. And God spoke to me, and I didn't eat for 40 days. So that's the Ramban's proofs. He says that it must be that this section occurred prior to the giving of the Torah. Okay, Perek Chavdalet is out of order. Where Perek Chavdalet is which Perek? That's later on. Oh, that's very good, Marcy. Great point. At the end of Mishpatim, right? So that Perek is also out of order. Okay, very interesting. Good point. Now,
Rabbi,
whenever you have, let's see if we can move a little bit, and then we'll get your thought, Miriam. We'll get your thought in a second. So, okay, fine. So Ramban says that Cheda Egel is in the right place, and that this chapter is in the right place before the giving of the Torah. However, Rashi and the Orach Chaim and other Mefarshim say that this section here in beginning of Yitro is out of place. Really, it occurred after the giving of the Torah. Now, whenever that occurs, what's the question? The question that you have to address is, why in the world would the Torah put it out of place? So whenever there's what's compelling them to say that it's out of place, so they have a couple of proofs, right? The pasuk, it says that he came to the mountain of God, and it says that Moshe is teaching them Torah, so it sounds like it's after Ma'amad Har Sinai. But if indeed this portion is out of place, then why did the Torah place it before Ma'amad Har Sinai? Why not place it in the proper order? Why not right after the war against Amalek, which is the end of Parshat Beshalach? Right after the war against Amalek, you should have Bnei Israel coming to Har Sinai. You should have the Aseret HaDibrot. And then afterwards, it should talk about Yitro coming to greet the people and greeting Moshe, and presenting and proposing the judicial system. Right? Why does the Torah go out of its way to place this perek out of place prior to the giving of the Torah? Another related question that you could ask is, why is Yitro such a central figure? Why do we make such a big deal about Yitro? Another question also related to that, which is, why did Yitro get the merit of having the Aseret HaDibrot in his parsha? Yitro is the high priest of Midian. Yes, he's part of the Mishpacha now, because Moshe married his daughter, but he's a high priest of Midian. He's, did he join Bnei Israel? Did he stay with Bnei Israel? There's a lot of opinions, but why does Yitro get Ma'amad Har Sinai in his parsha? Why do we name a parsha after Yitro altogether? Why is he so central, such a central figure here? And why does the Torah go out of its way to place this portion out of place prior to the giving of the Torah? So two explanations. And any thoughts? Maybe I'll open it up if anyone wants to share a thought.
Well,
go ahead.
I thought that because he was so impressed with what God has done for the Bnei Israel, and he's going out of his way to tell Moshe how impressed he is. And he knows about this story and about that story. And he was a priest of Midian, yet he recognized the power, the amazingness of Hashem. So
Beautiful.
maybe
that's one answer that's given, which I could say is perhaps amplified, Ayala, by Perek Yud Chet Pasuk Yud Aleph, where Yitro comes to Moshe and says, Ato yadati, now I know, Ki gadol Hashem Elokim, that God is greater than all other gods. Ki badavar asher zadu aleim, because in the way that Paro wanted to kill Bnei Israel, through water, through drowning, Hashem drowned the Egyptians. So Hashem punished the Egyptians measure for measure, mida keneged mida. So Yitro says, now I know. And that suggests that Yitro, we know that he was a high priest of Midian. And he was somebody who was very familiar with many different types of worship, many different modes of worship. Rivki, I see your hand, and we'll get your thought in a moment. So Yitro was somebody who kind of knew about a lot of the religions. He was an expert in comparative religion. And he chose Hashem. And he saw the emes, he saw the truth. But not only that, one idea that I once learned is that we learned from Yitro, the reason why we make such a big deal about Yitro, and the reason why it puts it here maybe before the giving of the Torah, which is that a central idea that a Jew needs to always have is to always be a seeker. Yitro was somebody who constantly sought and strove for the truth, for the emes. And that's what the Gemara says, that there are 613 mitzvot. And the Gemara in Makot crunches it down and says, really, the 613 mitzvot could be crunched down to 13 principles, 11 principles, 3 principles. And then it ends off by saying that really, that there's one principle that really encapsulates the Torah. Now, this is different than the Gemara in Shabbos that says that Hillel said to the potential prospective convert, he said that what is hateful to you, do not do unto your neighbor, and the rest is commentary. Hillel said that's the most important thing to know, which is basically a variation of Yahavta l'reacha kamocha. However, the Gemara in Makos on the last page, 24a, says that if you want to crunch everything down to one principle, so one pasuk is tzaddik bemunaso yichya, a righteous person lives through his faith, the centrality of faith in our lives. But the other pasuk that's brought in the Gemara is Dirshuni v'chayu. Seek me out, and you shall live. And what you see is that a Jew always needs to strive for the truth, and no matter how much you've accomplished, to strive for more. Now, while we're happy with our blessings, right? We're supposed to be shamech b'chelko. We're supposed to appreciate what we have, and we're also supposed to be appreciative and recognizing of our accomplishments and who we are, but we're always striving for more. We're always striving for growth. We're always striving to do more. We never rest on our laurels. We don't just think of where we are, we think of where are we going. And so Yisro, perhaps he's front and center here because he's a seeker. He's someone who was always doresh. He was doresh the emes. And we also have to be a doresh. We have to be a seeker to strive for growth. And there's a reason why kind of towards the end, I think it's the end of this parsha, it says that you're not supposed to have steps leading up to the Mizbeach, but it's supposed to be a ramp. Why are you not allowed to have steps? Because with steps, you could rest on each step. But with a ramp, you can't rest, right? If you pause for a moment, then you're going to regress. And that the moment a Jew says, okay, I've done enough, I can relax, I can take it easy. So then it's very easy to regress at that point. And so that the reason why it's a ramp is to show that we have to constantly be striving to grow. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, you can still, there's time for rest and relaxation. And of course, there's time, for leisure. And when I was leaving, I was visiting somebody in the hospital last week. And, the guard kind of like wished me a good day. And he said, take it easy. And I said, that's such a nice bracha. I said, take it easy. It's a nice idea. Because it is important to at times, of course, to take it easy and relax. But bigadol, in terms of as a general idea, that a Jew is never supposed to be satisfied with what they've already accomplished. You're not supposed to think that you've already achieved everything that you're supposed to achieve. And so that's why it's not steps up to the Mizbeach, but rather it's a ramp. Yitro is front and center of the parsha because he's somebody he's a seeker, he's Doresh. All the 613 mitzvahs can be encapsulated in that one idea of Dirshuni v'chayu. Seek me out and you shall live. And Rifki, before I get your thought, I wanted to suggest one other idea of the Orach Chaim. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, you want to know why this portion is here out of place? It's to teach us that we could always learn from, we could learn from everyone. We could learn wisdom from the nations of the world. Yitro is a high priest of Midian. What, the Rosh Yeshiva is going to learn from the high priest of Midian. The Jews are going to learn from the nations of the world. And the Orach Chaim says, based on the Gemara says, Torah b'gayim al tamin. If somebody says that non-Jews have Torah, don't believe it. But if somebody says that the nations of the world have wisdom, chachma b'gayim tamin, then you're supposed to believe that. The Orach Chaim says, why is this parak out of place? If it really happened after Matan Torah, why is it placed here before Matan Torah? And why do we make such a big deal about Yitro? The answer is that we accept truth from wherever it comes, and there can be truth and wisdom among the nations of the world and among the wise people of the world. Mom, I'm not sure if you're thinking about this about Daddy, right? When he went to, did he say this when he went to Clark University? Right, Daddy was went to RJJ and Shlomo Kluger and got smicha from RJJ with Rav Moshe Heyer, and then what did he say, Mom? He said that when he went to Clark University, he realized that there are many smart people among the non-Jews as well.
Right,
Sure.
that's exactly right. That's what he said. He said he couldn't because he led such a sheltered, grew up in such a sheltered environment, only surrounded by yeshiva and yeshiva learning. And there he was surrounded by non-Jews and other people who had great wisdom. He was astounded.
Very nice. So the Baruch Sha'amar of Baruch Halevi Epstein, who is the author of the Torah Temima, Baruch Halevi Epstein, that was actually one of my father's favorite Sfarim. The Torah Temima is known as the Shadchan between the Torah Shebichsav and the Torah Shebaal Peh. Because in the Torah Temima, on every pasuk, he quotes the Gemara and he quotes the Medrash, and he gives usually like one thought, one insight on every piece of Gemara. And that's the Torah Temima. It's the pasuk, is Onkelos, there's Rashi, and then he quotes the Gemara on that pasuk. It could be one piece of Gemara, it could be 4 pieces of Gemara or a Medrash, and then he gives you an insight on each source. It's a very beautiful sefer, the Sefer Torah Temima. So Baruch Halevi Epstein has another sefer called the Baruch Sha'amar, which is his commentary on Tefillah. And he wonders, why is the first Tefillah in the Siddur, Ma Tovu Alecha Yaakov? It's a beautiful pasuk, but that was said by Bilam, a non-Jewish prophet. He wanted to curse Bnei Israel. He ultimately was compelled to bless Bnei Israel, and he blesses them, Ma Tovu Alecha Yaakov, how beautiful are their tents. Why in the world would we start the Siddur, though, with words from a non-Jewish prophet? Says the Baruch Shamar. He gives 2 or 3 answers. One of his answers in the Sefer Baruch Shamar, he says, to teach us this foundational principle that there's wisdom among the non-Jews. We don't, and we should respect that, and we should try to find times when we embrace that wisdom and incorporate that wisdom. Like Mother's Day, for example. Now, look, I'm not going to get into Mother's Day. That's a great idea, Mother's Day. I'm not just that because my mom is on the shiur, but I've heard some people say, no, every day is Mother's Day. Okay, so get a card for your mother every single day. But if you're not going to get a card for your mother every single day, so get it for her on her birthday. and also get it for on Mother's Day is a nice idea. You're going to say it's chukas hakom. You're not supposed to learn from Gentile customs. So one time you're not supposed to learn is if it's connected to avodah zarah.
You're frozen.
Or if you're doing it only because where it's a problem, that's where it's problematic. However, if it's not connected to avodah zarah, and secondly, if there's a reason why you would do it, because there's some wisdom involved, then it's totally permitted. That's why, for example, Halloween is prohibited. A person should not be associated with any of the customs of Halloween because there's a connection to avodah zarah. But let's say Thanksgiving has no connection to avodah zarah, to idolatry. And it's a nice idea of Thanksgiving to express gratitude to God, to the country, to our family members. And so since there's no connection to avodah zarah and there's a reason behind it, then it's permitted. It's not a problem of chukas hakom. And Mother's Day is another example of that. There's no connection to avodah zarah, okay, unless a person worships their mom. Maybe that's taking it too far. We gotta, really see what Sigmund Freud says about that. But assuming it's no connection to avodah zarah, and it doesn't have any connection. And number two, there's a nice idea behind Mother's Day or Father's Day, so that's why it's permitted, in my view, to observe those days. It's not a mitzvah min Torah, but it's a nice idea, and it's something that we don't reject. So the Baruch Shamar, the Sefer Baruch Shamar, the Torah Tamima, he says that we start with Matovu Alecha Yaakov to teach us this idea. And I think it's a beautiful, very important idea. I think it's one of the principles of modern Orthodoxy, which is that yes, there's many different things of the world we do not embrace. There's many values of this country that we hold dear, that we do not follow, many values that are not consistent with Torah. But there are just many values and many things that we do embrace. And it's part of this idea of that we're connected to the world. We're not disconnected from the world around us. Yes, we have to recognize that we're different, and we have our own values and own mitzvos. But chachma b'gayim tamin, and so that's why it's the first section of the siddur is Matovo Alecha Yaakov, and the Orach Chaim Hakadosh, 18th century Morocco, Rav Chaim Ben Itar, that's his pshat as to why this section is out of place. Why is this section out of place? Why does the Torah make such a big deal about Yitro? Because he had a piece of wisdom to impart. What was his wisdom? The judicial system. He was democratizing the Jewish experience to some degree, right? He was getting more leaders involved. He was spreading out the wealth of scholarship, of knowledge, of leadership, and it was a good idea. And Moshe accepted it. Yitro, this non-Jew, this high priest of Midian, had a piece of wisdom to impart, and Moshe accepted it. And the Torah placed it here front and center before we receive the Torah, before we receive our unique mitzvos, before we receive our unique history, which is obviously Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. The Torah is the Torah. That's our life. That's our lifeblood. But before that, it wants to create this foundation that we respect all individuals that created the image of God. Everyone is a child of Hashem, and that we could actually learn wisdom as well from non-Jews as well. We learn wisdom from Yitro. Yes, Rifki. Rifki, you have to unmute yourself.
I say actually something totally different. You know me, I'm very contrarian here. Yitro was not a non-Jew at that point. Yitro had converted. That's why I think that this comes before that. It's out of order, because when Yitro was at Har Sinai, Yitro accepted the Torah at Har Sinai, and Yitro converted at Har Sinai. Therefore, at the point that he was giving Moshe advice, he had already accepted the Torah and he was already Jewish. It was no longer the wisdom of the Gentile. It was now the wisdom of the Jew, because I think he converted to Judaism. He accepted the Torah.
Okay. So that's so then you agree with the first pshat. You agree with the pshat that he was a seeker and he was someone who was a seeker of emes, and maybe that's the reason why it's placed over here to teach that foundational principle, as opposed to the.
But
Right, and he accepted the Torah. He converted, and
Who said? Who
that
said so? Who says so besides you, Rifki?
who says so besides me? I don't know. I think I've heard it. I
But
don't
why
know.
don't
Listen,
you say, I think he converted? What you've been saying is
no.
he
I
converted.
I
Why don't
believe
you
he
say, I
converted.
think he did? Okay, that's what you believe.
Right. I believe he converted. I believe he accepted the Torah. And I believe that's why there is a parsha named after him, because he was a priest of Midian who had seen all of the other religions, as the rabbi said, that at the end of the day, he showed that the greatest wisdom of all was the Torah, and he accepted it.
Doesn't
Very
mean
good.
he converted.
Miriam,
Oh,
converted.
Miriam, I think you wanted to share something before. Do you remember what you
yes,
wanted
but
to share?
it's tangential to what you're saying. And what you're saying is very interesting. I just, as usual, when I read the Torah, it's always renewing itself to me. And so it says not once, but twice in the first few sentences of the entire parsha. And Tzipora ve'et shnei baneha. It does not say habanim shalahem. It says each time she took her two sons. I was just wondering why it chose to say only her, but it's not important. So
It is. That's a good
Let me
question.
the one
think
who
about that.
did
I don't
the meat on them.
have anything super insightful to say, except to say that Moshe and Zipporah were not together at that point. Moshe
and
was
they were not for
Israel, and
apparently
Zipporah was-
years.
But she did the
Right.
bleed on them, so she became the person who
Who
was
brought them up, essentially. She
Now-
did.
Okay, so let's regroup. Yasha Koach, thank you. Now, and thank you all always for your insightful comments. Each one of you adds so much to the shir. Rashi says at the beginning of the parsha that Yitro had a number of names, and that one name was Yeter, and one name was Yitro, and one name was Chovav. And Rashi says that Rashi says that 7 names: Ruel, Yeter, Yitro, Chovav, Chever, Keni, Putiel. Rashi says, very beginning of the parsha, he says Yeter al Shem Sheyiter Parsha Achas B'Torah. That the reason why he was given that name Yeter is because a portion of the Torah was added in his honor, and that's what we've been talking about. That Moshe accepted it, and it teaches us this broader principle, which I think is very important to our philosophy, that we accept wisdom from the non-Jews. Not all, but things that are pieces of wisdom and insights, we accept that, and we respect technology and investments, of course, in medicine, technology, and in other areas of the world. But Rashi says that the portion that was added in honor of Yitro was v'atot techezeh. That's what Rashi says. And then why was it then? And then just parenthetically, from Yeter, he got the name Yitro when he converted, as Rifki suggested, that he did convert, Rashi says. So Miriam, Rifki does have a support there from Rashi that Yitro did convert, and he got the additional letter of the Vav. So that's why he got an additional letter. Chovav, Shechivav et Torah, was because he loved the Torah. And then Rashi continues. The question that I once heard is, why does Rashi give credit to Yitro only from v'atot techezeh? Because if you look later, really when Yitro comes to Moshe, he says to Moshe, really from Pasuk Yud Gimel, from Perek Yud Chet Pasuk Yud Gimel, it says Vayhimi Macharat. It was on the day after, either the day after Yom Kippur, or the day after, whatever it was. It says that he sees Moshe, Pasuk Yud Gimel, who's judging the people from the morning until the evening. And Pasuk Yud Daled, so Yitro says, Madua ato yoshev levadecha? Why are you sitting on your own from morning until night? And he says, Yitro continues and says, Lo tov hadavar asher ata oseh. In Pasuk Yud Zayin, it's not good what you're doing. Pasuk Yud Chet, Navolti Bo, you're going to certainly wither. So Yitro has a number of psukim there. Then finally, after saying, expressing these concerns and saying he's going to give a suggestion, in Pasuk Chaf Aleph, Pasuk 21, that's when he says that you should choose judges from the people who are strong of character, fearing of God, who are truthful, and appoint them as judges over the people to help support you, to partner with you. So the question that I once heard from my Rebbe, Rabbi Jacob J. Schachter, is that if Rashi is giving credit to Yitro for a portion in the Torah, and Rashi says that's why he got the name Yeter. Where do you get the name Yitro from? Because in some places it's called Reuel. Rashi says he got the name Yeter because a portion of Torah was added through his wisdom, in his merit. And what's the portion that was added? So it's the whole judicial system proposal. But that judicial system proposal began in Pasuk Yud Gimel, Carol and Marilyn. It began much earlier. Why does Rashi say that the portion that was added in his honor was Pasuk from Pasuk Chaf Aleph and on the Atat Techazeh, which you should choose judges? Yeah, that's his solution. But the whole portion began 8 psukim earlier. So the answer Rabbi Schachter gave, if I remember correctly, he said that a person doesn't get credit for saying this is no good. A person, whether it's in the family, in the community, wherever it is, you don't get credit for saying, that this is not working, this is no good, you're no good, you're gonna certainly wither. Why are you doing it this way? You don't get credit for that. You only get credit for that, and that's only meaningful if you're coming with a solution. If you have a constructive idea about how to address the situation, that's something constructive. That's something meaningful. And that's what you're going to get credit for. And that's why Rashi goes out of his way to say he's called Yeter for adding a parsha, but those opening psukim of Madua, Lotov, Navol Tibol, he doesn't really get credit for that, because you have to come with a solution. And I think that's very meaningful for us, when we're in the community or in our families. A lot of people are able to point out the problems, but number one, they're not willing to take action to help address those issues. That's why I've done it many times. My kids joke around with me. If somebody comes to me and says, there's a problem, we're not doing this in the community, I say, okay, good. You're now the head of that committee to address that issue. And it's happened a couple of times where the person said to me, oh, you know what, it's not really, it's not as bad as, maybe it's not such a bad thing, actually. And the message is that it's not enough to just point out the problem, but you have to come eager. Yes, we do also have to point out the flaw, and we have to be willing to accept critique as an individual, as a community, as a nation. But you got to come with a solution, and you only get credit for the solution. In Perek Yurchet Pasuk Chaf, so Moshe says that what I do is I teach Bnei Yisrael. Actually, this is not Moshe. This is Yitro, rather. Excuse me. So Yitro says to Moshe, because Moshe in the previous Moshe had said in Pasuk Tet Zayin that I teach Bnei Yisrael the laws. But now Yitro is coming along and he's about to present his solution. So in Pasuk Chav, Yitro says that you should continue teaching Bnei Yisrael the laws. You should teach them the way of the Torah, and the actions which you should do. So the Medrash has an intriguing comment here that what does it mean here, et hamase asher ya'asun? So that mase is the actions, and ya'asun is lifnim meshuris hadin, is that to be willing to go above and beyond within those actions. And the Ksava Kabbalah of Rav Mecklenburg wonders, how did Chazal get that from the word yasun? Etamase yasun is kind of a superfluous expression. The actions which you shall do. So how do you know that Masa is the law and Yasun is above and beyond the letter of the law? Niksava Kabbalah says the reason is because he says when you have the Vav and the Nun after a word, so that often means that that's like the essence, that's the essence of something. So for example, by liskor means to remember. And zikaron is the essence.
You're frozen.
We've lost the Rabbi Topp. I don't know where he is. A glitch.
Okay, where did I lose you? Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, you talked
Yeah,
about
we-
your own, Rabbi.
Okay, so you have liskor is to remember, zikaron is the essence of remembering. Shabbat is the mitzvah of Shabbat. Shabbaton is kind of like, the essence of Shabbat, is the Shabbaton, the pasuk says. And the Ksava Kabbalah says that maybe asher ya'asun, mas is the action. Ya'asun is the, right? Zikaron is the essence of liskor. And so Ya'asun is the essence of the action. And if you want to know what the essence of an action is, it's to not just do the action. It's like kind of counterintuitive. It's not just about checking off the boxes. That if a person really cares about something, so then they'll even at times go above and beyond what is required, because they feel passionate about that issue, and they're doing it because it's the right thing to do. So then they're going to do it even above and beyond what's necessary. And so just that's a nice idea. Again, that's another piece of wisdom from Yitro, or in the Shabbat Kabbalah, that he's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. And Yitro says that you'll teach them the path of Torah, of Hashem, and you'll teach them et hamasa, the actions. Asher Yasun, the Medrash says that that's to sometimes go above and beyond the letter of the law. And how do you get that? Because Ya'asun is with the Vav Nun, that's the essence of the action. And the essence of the action, if you really care about it and you're really sincere about it, is to not just check off the boxes, but to really go above and beyond at times, because that shows that we really care about that issue. Okay, this is all what we learned from the chapter Perek Yirchet, which is when Yitro comes to greet Moshe and Bnei Israel, and he presents this big idea about the judicial arrangement. And we learn number one, which is that a person has to always be a seeker. And there's all machlokas is before Ma'amad HaSinai, after HaSinai. But we learned from Yitro that a person has to be a seeker. Number two, we learn wisdom from people like Yitro, which is a very, very interesting, controversial, progressive idea in some circles. And number three, which is it's not just about problems, but it's about finding solutions. And this last idea was the fact that it's when it comes to Torah, it's not just about doing the mitzvah, checking off the boxes, but it's really about it's a strange thing. Do you have to go above and beyond? That's kind of, is that if you're supposed to go above and beyond, then what makes it above and beyond? Maybe that's what you're supposed to do. So it's kind of an interesting construct to go lifnim mishuris hadin.
Can I clarify something? Is when you say going above and beyond in the context you're speaking about, it wouldn't mean adding a layer or adding a chumrah or adding a few minutes. It would mean going deeper into the action so that it comes out providing the right result. So in other words, whatever it is, whatever. I can't
Nice way to
give
put
you
it. To do the mitzvah to the fullest, you mean?
is
to
not to add a layer, but to go deeper.
Nice. I like it.
Well, that's lifnim meshuat.
Or see, in other words, like
Right,
to give
right,
tzedakah, one way to do it is you give the person some tzedakah. But if you go deeper and you really help the person get on their feet and you help give the person a job, perhaps, if you go deeper within that action, it'll achieve the results that you're looking for.
right.
Let me end with
Want to know what the baby's name is? Mazel Tov. Did they name her today?
Thank you. Thank you very much. But let's do one other idea. I want to keep the suspense. I did say it at the beginning. I think you might have missed.
Sorry, I was a few minutes late. I'm sorry because
the name is Avigail Emuna. And okay, we'll come back to that in a second. Okay. But it was in Rabbi Yossi's shul. We named the baby in Rabbi Yossi's shul in the Jewish.
Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Okay. Okay.
If we don't mention, we have to mention Ma'amad Har Sinai just a little bit. It says in Perek Yutes Pasuk Beis, Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Ahar, that Bnei Israel camped around the mountain, and Rashi famously says Vayichan is in the singular to teach us that Bnei Israel were biyachad. There was a sense of achdus, of togetherness. And I think that's an idea of Rashi that resonates with us today, and that we were reminded on October 7th in a very, very painful way. We were reminded that we're one nation, and we've seen the tremendous achdus among Klal Yisrael during this very difficult time, and perhaps Vayichan, that a prerequisite to the Torah. Again, we've been highlighting this notion of the foundational ideas kind of preceding the Torah. A prerequisite to the Torah is achdus, is to be ki'ish echad b'leiv echad, and perhaps this, the idea of derech eretz kadma l'Torah. Then it says a few psukim later that Hashem tells Bnei Israel, this is on the 2nd of Sivan, says that you should be a mamleches kohanim v'gai kadosh. A mamleches kohanim v'gai kadosh, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. I understand that we're a holy nation, but we're not all kohanim. So we've learned this in the past, that this gets related to the idea we said before, that it's we accept the wisdom from the non-Jews, right? Chachma b'gayim tamin, but it works in the other way as well, which is that we have a responsibility to bring Jewish values to the world, and because we have a relationship with society, we don't cut ourselves off. Yes, we put up safeguards, but we don't cut ourselves off, and that's a very important part of our philosophy. Where we're separate, but we're part of the world around us. And so Mamleches Kohanim, what do you mean? We're all Kohanim? We're not all Kohanim. The answer is that we're Kohanim in relation to the world around us. Within Am Yisrael, a Kohen is a teacher of Am Yisrael. The Kohen is the leader. Kohen is the teacher. The Kohen is a role model. Within the world, Am Yisrael are Kohanim for the world. We're supposed to be a teacher. We're not better. We have a higher level of responsibility. We're supposed to be role models. We're supposed to bring values to the world around us and make it Kiddush Hashem, which is what all of you, I'm sure, knowing you, are doing. And so that's why we're a Mamleches Kohanim v'Gai Kadosh. We're separate as a Gai Kadosh, but not totally separate. We're a Mamleches Kohanim for the world around us. And then finally, the last idea that I wanted to share before we wrap it up is that it also says that Bnei Israel vayiyatzvu b'tachtet ahar. Where it says that Bnei Israel encamped at the foot of the mountain. Where is that pasuk? Where is that pasuk? It says that's pasuk Yud Zayin. And the commentaries bring the medrash that betachted, the Gemara in Shabbat says that betachted means under. So this leads to the famous tradition, quoted in the Gemara Shabbos, Pevav, Pezayin, Peches, there, that Hashem took the mountain and kind of suspended it over the heads of Bnei Israel. And he said, if you accept the Torah, all is good. And if you don't accept the Torah, then Sham Tehek Furatchem, there will be your burial place.
Rabbi?
So,
In Perek Yutet, Pasuk Gimel, it says, Vayichan Sham Israel neged hahar. So, again, Israel is a nation, it's a singular. So therefore, the word for that they rested, Vayichan, in singular, Israel. And the same thing on top there, where it says, Vayichan ha'am. Am is in singular, it's not a plural word. Therefore, the word Vayichan is in singular as well.
Very good. Was the message I was trying to convey before. Very, very good. Exactly. And then, so we got Vayichan in the singular. We have this notion of Mamlech as Kohanim, and then Visyasu b'tachtet ahar, that Hashem suspended the mountain above Bnei Israel. And so that raises questions, and maybe we'll leave you with this, which is, wait a second, I thought Bnei Israel said Na'aseh v'nishma. Right. So I'll leave you with that question. They said Na'aseh v'nishma. On the other hand, it sounds like Hashem kind of forced them to accept it. What do you want to say, Marcy?
When is Na'aseh v'nishma? Where does that phrase appear? And
that expression appears at the end of Mishpatim, at the end of Mishpatim, later on.
Oh, it's later.
In that parak that you made.
Later, yeah.
It's later.
Yeah.
So, second question is, does it say you accept the Torah, good, and if you don't accept the Torah, Sham, over there will be your burial place?
But in the story of Purim, it says as if Na'aseh v'nishma with a mountain over their head. They're accepting it freely.
Kiplu v'kimu.
Yeah, I don't know. Something just happened there. I don't know why. For some reason, I lost connection for a moment. Do you hear me now?
Yes. I said.
We'll just end off by saying that that why does it say there will be the burial place? Why there? So there's much more to be said over here, but I'll just answer, which is that Torah is our way of life. If a person doesn't observe Torah, so you're missing out on the opportunity of the mitzvot, and of course, you're not doing the right thing. But you might not notice it right away, what you're missing. But over the course of time, in terms of, living a life of purpose, living a life of meaning, where ultimately you achieve, your potential. So if you live a life of Torah, great. If you don't live a life of Torah Sham, later on, it'll become kind of clear that if you without Torah, that you're going to be missing that life of purpose. You're going to be missing a tremendous amount from the world. It's a little bit like the analogy is of a fly. You cover over a fly, because why the analogy of the barrel? Why the metaphor of the barrel? Hashem, because the Medrash says that Hashem's going to suspend the mountain over us like a barrel. The answer is because if you cover over a fly, the fly starts whizzing around very, very fast. It looks like it's enjoying himself. Looks like he's dancing and he's discoing, but he's really running out of air. And the same thing in our lives, where sometimes people looks like they're having fun. They're doing whatever they want, dancing. but really they're running out of spiritual air. And over the course of time, later on, they're going to realize what they're missing, and then they're just not going to have that life of purpose that a person can have, and we all strive to have as sincere and dedicated Jews. So Yasha Koach to all. So nice learning with you. Thank you so much for joining us by Zoom. Happy to hear a couple other comments, and but really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Happy to hear good news today.
Thank you all so much.
Regards to Jordana as well, Mazal Tov.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Very best. We should share simchas. Cultivate everyone. Thank you.
Amen.
Is Jordana with you?
Jordana is with me. Yes.